Now, these are devastating and truly horrific allegations.
A covert financial crisis has just erupted at the heart of Buckingham Palace after King Charles discovered that $15 million had been brazenly siphoned from a royal trust fund. Following the trail of money across the Atlantic, the king was stunned to uncover that the mastermind behind the staggering embezzlement scheme was none other than Meghan Markle. This was not merely a large-scale theft designed to cover catastrophic financial losses in the United States. It was also a direct assault on the honor and credibility of the British monarchy. Left with no other choice, King Charles was forced to act decisively, assembling an ironclad body of evidence before issuing a breathtaking final ultimatum in order to restore justice to the crown. So how did Meghan manage to steal such an enormous sum right under the royal family's nose? And what punishment and what fury from King Charles awaits her, now that the end of the road is rapidly closing in? In an effort to streamline the royal workforce and make the monarchy's finances more transparent to the public, King Charles made a sweeping reform decision. The king personally ordered a full audit of every trust fund operating within the palace's financial system. It was an extensive and extraordinarily rigorous review, requiring every ledger, every financial record, and every flow of money within the royal household to be meticulously cross-checked and verified so that not even the smallest irregularity could escape detection. It was during this painstaking and uncompromising review that one of the palace's financial officers unexpectedly uncovered an anomaly of an exceptionally serious nature. A financial loss had been occurring repeatedly over an extended period, with the accumulated total reaching $15 million. Even more alarming, every penny of this enormous sum had been quietly siphoned out of the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund. This was an obscure subsidiary fund that attracted very little attention within the palace because its sole purpose was to finance the historic diplomatic activities of the British royal family throughout different eras. As the financial officer dug deeper into the technical records and cross-checked the transfer orders, they were horrified to discover that the entire $15 million had never been used for diplomatic purposes as required under the fund's official spending regulations. Instead, the money had completely vanished, having been successfully transferred into a mysterious account registered overseas. Recognizing the extraordinary severity of the situation, the officer immediately reported the explosive discovery directly to the head of the monarchy. The moment King Charles was informed of the serious budget misappropriation, he was consumed with anger over such a brazen act taking place within the palace itself. However, in order to protect national security and prevent a scandal that could shake international public opinion, the king decided to keep the matter strictly confidential and forbade any information from leaking outside the palace walls. He immediately authorized a completely covert internal investigation. Security personnel and financial experts were ordered to swiftly re-examine the backgrounds, transaction histories, and personal connections of every employee working within the palace, determined to identify the traitor who had enabled the operation and ensure that the individual received the harshest punishment possible. Would this sweeping investigation of every palace employee finally expose the face of the traitor? And more importantly, who on the other side of the Atlantic had been pulling that person's strings? The internal investigation unfolded in absolute secrecy, but with extraordinary urgency behind the fortified walls of Buckingham Palace. Under the direct command of King Charles, the Royal Security Service and financial experts reopened every personnel file and meticulously reviewed the access history of the trust fund management system. After days of painstaking screening and cross-checking the mysterious transfer orders, the investigation finally exposed the identity of the traitor within the palace itself. It was the royal accountant, a senior official entrusted with the keys to several critical accounts, and someone who had maintained a particularly close relationship with Meghan Markle ever since her time in Britain. To avoid alerting anyone involved, the investigators began conducting an in-depth examination of the accountant's personal transactions, encrypted communications, and travel records. The evidence they gathered gradually painted a shocking picture. The king was stunned to discover that the accountant had not acted alone. In reality, he had been working in close coordination with Meghan and was taking instructions from her remotely to carry out the massive embezzlement scheme. From her California residence, Meghan had been pulling the strings, guiding the accountant step by step and exploiting weaknesses in the control system to siphon money out of the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund before transferring it overseas without raising suspicion. Faced with such blatant betrayal within both his family and his own royal institution, King Charles was heartbroken and consumed with fury. Yet as the head of the monarchy, he knew he had to proceed with caution in order to assess both his daughter-in-law's attitude and the extent of her defiance. Shortly afterward, King Charles decided to contact Meghan personally through a secure private email, confronting her directly about the shocking financial scandal. The email was sent from the king's personal account, and its contents were uncompromising, direct, and entirely free of hesitation. Dear Meghan, I am writing to you not as a father, but as the head of the British royal family, to question you regarding an exceptionally serious matter that has recently come to light. During the recent comprehensive audit of the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund, our financial department uncovered an ongoing loss totaling $15 million. The entire sum has vanished and was illegally transferred into an overseas account. Even more concerning, the evidence gathered during our internal investigation has established a direct connection between this act of embezzlement, you, and a royal accountant known to be closely associated with you within the palace. I require that you provide an immediate, clear, and truthful explanation regarding the origin of these financial transfers, as well as your role in directing a member of the royal household to execute these unauthorized transactions. This is your only opportunity to cooperate before this matter moves beyond the boundaries of an internal family affair. I await your prompt response. Charles. Carrying the full weight of royal authority and unmistakable warning, the letter crossed the Atlantic and arrived directly in Meghan's personal inbox in the United States. King Charles and his closest advisors waited patiently for some form of response, an explanation, a justification, or even an attempt to defend herself from California. Yet Meghan's reaction defied every standard of normal conduct. She completely ignored the king's deeply serious email of inquiry. Not a single reply was sent. There was no explanation, no attempt to justify herself, and not even a phone call to offer a defense. Meghan chose a silence that was openly defiant, refusing to answer every question while deliberately severing all communication with Buckingham Palace. This chilling silence not only demonstrated her complete disregard for royal discipline and protocol, but also amounted to an indirect admission of her involvement in the massive financial embezzlement scandal, pushing the confrontation between both sides to an even more dramatic and dangerous level. What severe punishment would King Charles impose in response to Meghan's defiant silence, and what horrifying truths would the traitorous accountant be forced to confess once he was taken into custody? Faced with Meghan's defiantly silent attitude and her deliberate decision to sever all communication, King Charles had finally run out of patience. Realizing that the gravity of the scandal had gone far beyond the possibility of a quiet internal settlement, the king immediately issued a top-secret order to the palace security forces. That very night, the traitorous royal accountant was escorted into custody and placed under restricted detention in an isolated section of the palace where he would undergo an exhaustive interrogation. Standing before the imposing authority of the king and under the suffocating pressure of the royal investigators, the accountant trembled uncontrollably, drenched in sweat. King Charles sat behind his desk, his piercing gaze fixed directly on the traitor. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, carrying an unshakable authority that filled the room. You have served this palace for many years. You were entrusted with the most important financial records of the monarchy. Yet you chose to sell your honor and assist an outsider in siphoning off the nation's assets. I am giving you one final opportunity to redeem yourself. Tell me the entire truth, from how this conspiracy was arranged to the true purpose of this operation and the person who has been pulling your strings from behind the scenes. Otherwise, the punishment awaiting you will not end with imprisonment alone. The king's uncompromising warning extinguished the accountant's last remaining hope of resistance like a bucket of ice water. Knowing he had reached the end of the road and that no escape remained, he collapsed to his knees and through trembling words confessed every detail of his crimes. "Your Majesty, please have mercy on me. I was truly blinded by greed. It was Meghan, she was the one who contacted me first and pressured me into doing this. She told me her businesses and commercial ventures in the United States had been suffering one devastating loss after another. Her failing media projects had buried her under enormous debts and she was facing massive contractual compensation payments. She said she had no way to raise money in America anymore, so she set her sights on the Royal Trust Fund. She promised that if I helped her siphon money out of the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund, she would reward me with a generous commission in exchange for creating fake invoices and fabricating diplomatic expense records to conceal the missing funds from future audits." Still sobbing uncontrollably, the accountant continued his confession, exposing the filthy secret agreement that had existed between the two of them. "It didn't stop with falsifying invoices to steal the money. Meghan imposed another condition on me as well. Because I worked at the very center of the palace's financial operations, she ordered me to use my position as her eyes and ears. My job was to listen for everything, to gather information about every development, every confidential meeting, and every internal decision made by the royal family, then secretly report everything back to her in America so she could stay informed and figure out how to respond. I regret everything. I never imagined it would go this far." Through the painstaking investigation, and by cross-checking this direct testimony against the financial records already collected, every sophisticated tactic employed by Meghan and the accountant was finally brought into the light. It became clear that the pair had deliberately established a tightly secured, encrypted communication network spanning the Atlantic long before the embezzlement began. Drawing upon her former status and her intimate knowledge of how the royal household operated, Meghan had guided the accountant step by step through every stage of the financial theft. Meghan's ultimate objective was nothing less than obtaining the $15 million to rescue her rapidly collapsing career in the United States, cover mounting legal expenses, and compensate for devastating financial losses. In return for the accountant's loyalty, she transferred a substantial portion of the embezzled funds directly into his personal account, turning him into a loyal puppet who not only falsified financial records, but also acted as a spy gathering confidential palace intelligence right under King Charles's nose. Every hidden corner of this betrayal had now been stripped bare, leaving on the king's desk the darkest and most comprehensive dossier of evidence assembled thus far. How would King Charles use this explosive recorded confession to force Meghan into surrender? And what uncompromising final ultimatum was now waiting for her? The naked truth revealed through the traitorous accountant's confession pushed the head of the monarchy to the very limit of his endurance. King Charles was consumed with fury over Meghan's audacious, deceitful, and meticulously calculated actions. She had not only mercilessly siphoned royal assets to rescue her own failing career, but had also turned a palace employee into a spy tasked with listening for and reporting every confidential development within the royal household. Refusing to let his anger cloud his judgment, the king acted immediately with absolute decisiveness and uncompromising resolve to protect the integrity and discipline of the monarchy. King Charles ordered the accountant's entire detailed confession to be professionally recorded. At the same time, under his direct supervision, financial experts completed the collection of every single piece of evidence without overlooking a single detail, including the transfer records, transaction statements, tracing the movement of money from the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund through a network of shell companies before ultimately landing in Meghan's account in the United States. The ironclad dossier of evidence, together with the recorded confession, was placed under the strictest security measures before being sent directly to Meghan's private address in California. Accompanying the incriminating file was a personal voice recording from King Charles himself. The king's voice was never raised, yet every word was firm cold and carried the crushing weight of a final ultimatum that left no room for negotiation. Meghan, I am sending you these materials not to negotiate, but to deliver the final decision regarding your future. The complete confession of the traitorous accountant, whom you manipulated along with every piece of evidence documenting the money transfers, the fabricated invoices, and the path of the $15 million taken from the Royal Trust Fund into your account, is now entirely in my possession. You chose to ignore my previous email. You chose silence as a way of challenging the authority of the Crown. But in the face of this irrefutable evidence, your silence can no longer protect you. I am giving you one and only one ultimatum. I require you to publicly accept responsibility for your wrongdoing and return the entire $15 million you stole from the royal family, not a single penny less. You are to do so immediately, voluntarily, and without drawing public attention. If you refuse or attempt to delay, I will show no further leniency. This entire case file will be delivered directly to the judicial authorities and international law enforcement agencies. You will face a financial prosecution that will shock the world, receive the most severe penalties the courts can impose, and you will undoubtedly go to prison. When that day comes, every ounce of the reputation you struggled to build, along with every remaining asset you possess in the United States, will be seized and wiped away completely. Think very carefully before making your choice, because this is the first and the last opportunity I will ever give you. The King's final ultimatum, filled with overwhelming fury, yet delivered with unwavering reason, struck like a fatal blow, completely shattering Meghan's arrogance across the Atlantic. He left her with no opportunity to exploit legal loopholes or fabricate yet another false alibi. Every uncompromising word spoken by the king in the recording echoed like a formal sentence hanging over Meghan's future.
Now only two paths remained before Meghan. She could bow her head, admit her guilt, accept financial ruin, and quietly gather the money necessary to repay the royal family in full. Or she could face the full force of the law in the public eye, endure imprisonment, and lose everything she still possessed. King Charles's uncompromising resolve had cornered Meghan into a hopeless endgame, forcing her to make a decision while consumed by absolute panic. How would Meghan respond under the overwhelming pressure of King Charles's ultimatum? And what disastrous fate now awaited both her and the traitorous accountant?
Crushed beneath the suffocating pressure of the king's final ultimatum and the overwhelming financial evidence that King Charles had sent her, Meghan realized that every one of her hidden cards had become completely worthless. There was no path left to retreat, nor could she continue using silence to evade responsibility or challenge the authority of the crown. Faced with the prospect of criminal prosecution before an international court, the certainty of imprisonment, and the permanent destruction of her reputation in the eyes of the world, she found herself cornered beyond escape. In the end, Meghan was forced to accept the king's uncompromising conditions, to quietly admit her wrongdoing and repay the entire $15 million she had embezzled.
However, raising such an enormous sum within such a short period became an overwhelming challenge. In order to repay the British royal family, Meghan was forced to resort to a series of extraordinarily drastic and bitter financial measures. She hurriedly placed countless valuable personal assets in the United States on the market, from expensive real estate holdings to luxury possessions, selling them at bargain prices simply to generate cash as quickly as possible. As if that were not enough, she was also forced to formally declare bankruptcy for multiple business ventures, media projects, and shell companies operating under her control in the United States, restructuring everything in a desperate attempt to recover what little capital she had left. This fire sale of assets and wave of bankruptcy filings triggered a devastating chain reaction. Meghan's business affairs in America, already drowning in debt and plagued by one disastrous financial loss after another, now collapsed faster and more completely than ever before. Major business partners turned their backs on her. Her remaining contracts were canceled, and the personal financial empire she had spent years trying to build officially crumbled into nothing. Meghan was left not only financially ruined, but completely exhausted of all financial strength, condemned to live in humiliation and crushing defeat in the United States as the ultimate price for her greed. Meanwhile, in London, the punishment for the traitor inside Buckingham Palace was carried out with unwavering severity and cold precision. King Charles showed absolutely no tolerance for anyone who had betrayed the trust placed in them. As for the traitorous royal accountant, the king imposed an exceptionally harsh punishment, though one kept strictly confidential to preserve the dignity of the monarchy. Rather than being brought before a public court and risking a media scandal, the accountant was sentenced to a silent life imprisonment within the walls of the palace itself. The traitorous accountant was stripped of every title, privilege, salary, and employment benefit he had accumulated throughout years of service. He was ordered to spend the rest of his life working for the royal household without pay as an act of atonement for the betrayal and embezzlement he had committed. Every aspect of his daily life and every duty he performed would remain under constant rigorous surveillance by palace security, leaving him without even the smallest measure of personal freedom. He was condemned to spend the remainder of his days in loneliness, performing hard labor without earning a single penny inside the very place where he had once dreamed of collecting illicit commissions. The case involving the disappearance of $15 million from the Ducal Heritage Trust Fund came to a close in complete silence before the media. Yet it left behind invaluable lessons and a devastating ending for those consumed by boundless greed. King Charles succeeded in protecting the monarchy's finances and preserving the discipline of the crown, eliminating traitors both inside and outside the royal household, while safeguarding the dignity and stability of the British royal family. How do you feel about the actions of the characters and the dramatic twist throughout this story? In your opinion, what deeper lesson does the ending for Meghan and the traitorous accountant teach about greed and loyalty? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.